So this year, February 2021, on my birthday, I decided to deactivate everything.
Last year,
2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I decided to delete all of my social media. Hi, my name's Joe, and this is my yearly update video that I make talking about social media, the reason I deleted it, and the benefits I felt since deleting social media. In this video, we're going to talk about the reason I wanted to delete my social media. We're going to talk about the short-term pains I felt while deleting my social media and feeling a bit lonely and isolated. I'm then going to talk about the kind of long-term personality changes I've noticed in myself since deleting my social media. And then we're going to talk about the reason that this year in particular has been one of the hardest years yet. It's going to be what I call a bit of a low dopamine video. It's going to be a sit down chat. There's not going to be too many cutaways. So I respect the fact that the majority of you might not make it to the end of this video. So I want to make something very clear from the get-go. And that is that deleting my social media was one of the best decisions I ever made. It led to much needed personality changes in myself, and it allowed me to kind of unlock potential I didn't know I had. If you've clicked on this video because you're curious of the benefits and you think that maybe it's for you but you're not sure, take this as your sign. Take this as the thing you've been looking for to kind of push you to make the choice. Make the choice of being uncomfortable for a little bit and delete your social media, and then hopefully in a year's time it'll be you sat behind the camera documenting your journey. I am ridiculously British, but I do think to properly enjoy a long video like this, you do need a cup of tea. I've spoken a lot on my other videos about the reason I wanted to delete my social media, but the general cliff notes of it is that I felt directionless in my life. I went to university and I studied psychology, and I came out of university and I was working as a youth worker for an organisation which I didn't want to do. I didn't have any interest in working with children. I was quite unsure of myself and who I wanted to be, and I just felt pretty lost. On top of this, my mental health seemed to just be getting lower and lower with every month that passed, and it started to get to a point where I'd get like these mini panic attacks out in public as well. When I look back, one of the things that really sticks out to me was how fragile I was. I had such a fragile sense of who I was as a person, and I was very insecure about myself as well, about who I was and where I fitted into the world. And the thing is, at this point I was 23 years old. I was an adult, so that it was not the typical teenage angst and you'd grow out of it. I should have been grown out of it by that point if I was going to grow out of it. So on my birthday, when I turned 23, I decided to delete my social media. I was so kind of unhappy and dissatisfied with where my life was, and I had no idea on where I wanted it to go, that I just knew I needed to make a change. And it seemed like the obvious change because I was spending 4, 6, 7 hours a day on my phone. So if I wanted to change something in my life because I wasn't happy with my life, it made sense to start at the biggest time waster, the biggest thing that was contributing to my life that I was dissatisfied with. Short term, I wanted to maybe do some exercise or something, I don't know. The initial kind of feelings I had with deleting social media was genuinely like freedom, because I felt like I'd got rid of this version of myself that only existed online. I'd managed to get rid of a version of me that I had been upkeeping online constantly since I was like 14 years old. And maybe that feeling of like freedom came from my insecurities. I think I put quite a lot of effort into crafting an image of myself on my social media, that being able to basically kill him off in one go and just delete just did feel a bit freeing. I all of a sudden felt like I could be a bit more authentic and a bit more myself, even if I necessarily didn't have that audience to do it to. The first 30 days after you delete social media are rough, because your brain is so hardwired to expect dopamine and expect entertainment from your phone that it just constantly is grabbing your phone. I would be opening up the Photos app on my phone and just reminiscing from photos from like the week before, or I'd like find myself opening the calculator app just because my like hand was so desperately trying to seek dopamine somewhere on my phone, because it always has found it there, that when there was none, it just roamed. top of this, I'd started to kind of see some of the cracks in my life that I'd been papering over for quite a while. In fact, I don't even know if papering over the cracks is the right word, because that implies that I was aware of them and was trying to hide them. I think what social media does very well is distract you from some of the negative things you have going on in your life. Maybe your relationships are poor, maybe you're sedentary too much, maybe you're just not a good person. I all of a sudden was able to kind of see a lot of the things that were quite negative in my life, quite bad. I'd managed to kind of see that I wasn't the best person in romantic relationships. I was maybe a bit toxic. I saw that some of my friendships were quite shallow and I wasn't good at putting the effort in. I understood that I wasn't good at meeting new people and that I was very inactive, and I started to kind of see my life for what it was. And I think what I'd previously done in the past, when these feelings had kind of bubbled up, oh, maybe I'm a bit of a shit boyfriend, I would go on my phone, scroll on my timeline and just forget about it, just sedate these feelings, get rid of these feelings, and when they've then been pushed back down, I could then go about with my life. When I took away that distraction, these feelings bubbled back up, and I was forced to kind of confront a lot of these things. And therefore, the first couple of weeks, and it extended a bit longer, but the first couple of weeks is when I started to notice it. I didn't particularly feel good. After that initial kind of euphoria of like, oh, look how free I am, wore off, I didn't feel good after that. I felt like a bit of a failure. But the truth is that I was a bit of a failure, and it was the first time I was kind of being confronted with that truth. And this is what annoys me with seeing other people talking about deleting their social media online, is because I don't see many other people talk about this negative feeling. I see so many videos of influencers or like wannabe influencers or self-improvement YouTubers, and they delete their social media, and they go for a walk in the park and they feel amazing, and then they think, yeah, you know what, I've learned something, and they get their social media back. And maybe I was just in a particular mess, but my experience was not like that. I didn't feel great. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel more in touch with nature. I actually started to feel pretty lonely and pretty kind of distraught with what I was seeing that was my own life. What happens after this point is when you're confronted with all the cracks in your life and you're forcing yourself to stare at these cracks, you start filling them in. I think it's just a natural thing that we do, that when we're confronted with the things that are wrong in our life, we try to fix them. And when your whole brain and presence is trying to fix something, it takes less conscious effort. Like, my relationships improved, not necessarily because I was putting in more conscious effort, although I was, but conscious effort also became easier because my brain wanted it more. Like, I had an unconscious driver behind these things that was helping me fill in these cracks as well. One of the things I did during this initial period, and that I think helped me become more self-aware and see these cracks for what they are, but also not feel completely bombarded and overwhelmed by them, was journal. Now, I didn't do it as much as I wanted to, or I think I could have benefited from, but that then led me to create this self-improvement detox journal. You see, there's quotes, there's a bit of text about kind of some of the things you'll experience at different parts throughout doing a social media detox. Daily prompts to fill out every single day. Now, I made these books with the intention of kind of selling them on, but what I've now done is made the digital format of this available. So if this is something you're interested in, if you're interested in kind of guiding yourself through the first 30 days of the detox, there's a link in my bio to the digital format. There's a small cost attached, just because, like I said, there's 127 pages in here, and I'm a bit worried that someone might just get it and rip it off and use it for their own stuff. So at least by putting a bit of a charge, it makes me a little bit compensated if that does happen. The other thing I'm doing, and there is a link in the bio to this as well, is creating a bit of a Discord. I'm calling this the No Scroll Club. Some of the best communities for no scroll advice, digital minimalism advice, exists on social media. And I've been unable to engage with that for the last couple of years because I don't have social media. So I've decided to create my own Discord chat. there's a link to the bio in there. There is a specific channel in that Discord chat for the first 30-day challenge. In a lot of my other videos, I've spoken about the benefits I've had from deleting social media. I've spoken about how my relationships with people became deeper and less superficial, and I'm better able to speak and communicate with new people and make connections with new people in a way I wasn't able to before. I've spoke about how I've developed kind of a stick-to-itiveness, an ability to set a goal and see it out, which I didn't have before, and that in itself kind of led me to things like running a marathon or changing my career or getting a very good job. All these kind of things have basically, as far as I see it, been a response from me deleting social media. But one thing I've reflected on quite a lot recently is the personality changes it made to myself. I was getting quite bad anxiety when I deleted my social media. Now, deleting social media wasn't like an off switch for anxiety, but what it did do was help me just get 5% more in control of my anxiety. And then with that 5% more, I was able to do more things that benefited my anxiety, like exercise more or self-reflect and journal more. And I just kept getting these little 5% wins. But deleting social media was the catalyst for that. So I couldn't have done it without that initial first step, but it wasn't just that first step in isolation. I've also become much more sure of myself, much more confident, and I just feel better able to tackle the world. Now, like I say, I think with all of these benefits, just like I was saying with anxiety, it's not necessarily the deleting the social media, but deleting my social media was the first step I needed to take. Not only was it distracting me from a lot of things in my life, as I've mentioned, but it was also dysregulating my dopamine. I've explained what I mean by this in previous videos, but I'll go over it really quickly. Your dopamine, which is like a happy hormone in your brain, your dopamine spikes when you do rewarding things. Scrolling on your timeline, seeing a cute animal is a rewarding thing, your dopamine spikes. When you are on social media, your dopamine is spiking constantly. Think about scrolling through a timeline, you'll see hundreds of things that, are rewarding to you, and they're actually tailor-picked by the algorithm for you. Every single one of those will spike your dopamine. There is nothing in real life as rewarding as the constant spikes of dopamine you get from social media. Maybe a strip club. But through 4 or 5 hours a day of scrolling, you're getting your brain used to this kind of constant dopamine spike. It's expecting it constantly. So therefore, you're always going to chase things that spike your dopamine quickly. And things that spike your dopamine quickly are very rarely hard work. They're very rarely things that will benefit you in the long term. By getting rid of social media, my kind of baseline dopamine level decreased. And with my baseline dopamine level decreased, I was able to kind of do more work, do more things that were less rewarding because I wasn't so used to being rewarded all the time. If your dopamine levels throughout the day are constantly being stimulated and they're constantly, at a high, say 8, how on earth are you going to get up and go and do some exercise or wash the dishes or read a book, which is probably like a 3 or 4, but it benefits you long term? That's such a big jump. Whereas when you're just living a normal life, your dopamine levels are probably like a 3. So then, going to the gym is a 4, it becomes more rewarding, you're more likely to do it. I feel like this last year in particular has been very difficult to stay off social media. And the reason for that isn't necessarily that I want to go back to my old platforms. It's just because deleting social media is kind of an evolving concept. Things will need deleting in the future that don't necessarily need deleting now. And that's because platforms change constantly and the way you interact with these platforms will change as well. Let's take YouTube for example. I love YouTube and I decided to keep YouTube because there is some really high quality content on YouTube. Since I deleted social media 4 years ago, there is now shorts on YouTube, and it seems like every time I go on YouTube, it's starting to push shorts more and more down my throat. Now, I do my best to avoid them, but it's getting more and more difficult. The reason I wanted to delete my social media was to get rid of mindless scrolling, and I feel like more platforms than ever are encouraging mindless scrolling. I've always had a kind of leave it relationship with Reddit. It's been good for keeping up with football updates, like transfer news, but that's pretty much it. So I've always been able to kind of leave it, and I've never really had it on my phone. More recently, over the last year or so, it's crept onto my phone more and more, even just in the browser function, and then I find myself scrolling on it more and more. Even though I don't necessarily have a timeline, I'll just find myself checking kind of like the Tottenham thread more and more. Therefore, Reddit, which wasn't a problem for me in the start, is becoming a problem, so I need to kind of look at that and address that and start to delete that now. So as these platforms evolve, as I evolve and the way I use these platforms evolve, I'll need to delete them. Deleting social media is the concept. It's not just a one-time thing. It takes continuous work. And I think that's pretty much it for this year's update. If you have deleted your social media, I'd love to know your experience. You can comment down below or join the Discord, the No Scroll Club, and talk with me on there. I'm hoping to build a bit of a community of people who we can all kind of support each other and, be an online community without being a chronically online community. As mentioned as well, you can get the digital version of the detox journal on the link in my bio. If you're looking for one last sign to delete your social media, this is it. Delete your social media. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the Discord.
So this year, February 2021, on my birthday, I decided to deactivate everything.
Last year, I deleted my social media accounts. 2 years ago, I deleted all of my social media. 3 years ago, I deleted all of my social media.
I used to be a real heavy social media user. I was born in 1997, and I kind of just grew up with social media.
So much of my personality, so much of my friendship groups, my hobbies was all kind of like deeply rooted in social media.
It was easy to go there and be confident and be a different person. Instant validation for, the thoughts that I was feeling and the way I was wording things, and I think that meant a lot to younger me in a way that only now I'm truly starting to appreciate.
I always had this feeling that if I could reduce my usage, I'd be a little bit happier, a little bit more productive, and just a little bit more human. I kind of knew that this kind of content consumption was something that had never really been explored before. It never happened in human history.
What I wasn't expecting is the catalyst effect it had on every other aspect of my life.
As time went on, I started to find different ways to cope and manage negative feelings.
I would absolutely and wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone, to at least consider it.
I do believe it's just the devil's business, man. You should get out if you can.
I think the biggest thing I've learned is social media isn't real life. Everything in my life, by every measurable metric, has improved. And I wholeheartedly believe that was because I deleted social media.
If you can live without it, you absolutely should. If you can't live without it, you need to.